Okay, so we are going to start. I see we're 42, 44 people right now, so let's get started. As usual, this call will be recorded, and by the way, this is the disclaimer here. When you join this event, your name and you can change your name. This was an option. Um, is viewable by others. So if you disagree, please you can leave this call and then you can still catch up with the recording. As usual, we'll post it on YouTube and we'll share the link on the AVM website. This is our quarterly community call, and the AVM core team has been working hard for the past quarter on new content, new features, new capabilities, and we've been preparing this call. Not everybody from the team will talk today, but you will have a few of us, but the team hasn't changed. But today we have a few more people with us. We have guests actually from Servant, and we'll start with them in a minute, where they will talk about their adoption of AVM and the good, the great, the bad, the ugly, maybe with AVM. And then we'll give you a few updates, both on the Terraform side and on the Bicep side. Matt and René will do that. Jared will actually zoom into recently released, or at least in preview, with a Terraform migration tool, which should be extremely useful for many of you. John will go through the different updates that we have been doing over the past few months on our website, because we try to improve our guidance and our guidance for contributors, but also users. And then Jack will talk about AVM going V1 and what it means, how, when, and so on. Something that comes with it is also our support story, and we recently updated our support statement, so Jack will talk about that. And last but not least, we'll have Emily from our Bicep engineering team, who will come and share a little bit of what exists today in terms of Copilot experiences when it comes to generating infra as code, and what's baking for the future. And I think she wants to hear from you as well in the audience on the key scenarios you want to see enabled through AI experiences. And we will of course have a Q&A session. We have I think we had just one question on the GitHub issue, but of course we'll open for any other question. With that, let's move to our first topic, where we have Jack hosting our two guest speakers, Nathan and Aiden from Servant.
Amazing. Thank you, Charlie. Just a quick bit of logistics. Nathan or Aiden, are you able to take control, or do you want me to drive the slides?
I can take control.
Perfect. So yeah, as Charlie has quite rightly mentioned, we are really grateful to have Nathan and Aiden here from Servant, who are here to share their experience in using AVM so far as a partner who do an awful lot with Azure. But instead of me mincing their words and getting it wrong, I'm going to hand over to the both of them to give you a bit of an intro to themselves. And then they've got a little bit on how they're using AVM today inside a Servant, and some things that may spark some interesting insights for yourselves, or pose some questions for challenging the way that you're currently doing things, and maybe look to do some of the things that Servant are up to with AVM. And then we'll get into a bit of a discussion and a bit of Q&A towards the end. So yeah, over to you, Nathan and Aiden.
Hey guys, so just a bit of background on me. So I'm Nathan Bird, so currently Azure Architecture Director at Servant. As it says on the screen there, I've got over 20 years experience in IT. starting on good old service desk all the way back through those years, and then into end user computing, infrastructure, networking, and over the last 13, 14, 15 years, Azure architecture and engineering. So designing, implementing Azure environments and Azure adoption for customers. More latterly, Azure landing zones and all the advanced capabilities in there around advanced network security and all of that fun. And also moving on to where we are now in 2025 is all about how we can automate and accelerate the delivery of those services. Once we understand what we are deploying them for and what they are doing for us. So, ably assisted today by Aidan. So, Aidan, over to you for an intro.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so I'm Aidan, the senior Azure engineer at Servant. I've been with Servant for just over a year now. And as it says, focus on DevOps and infrastructure as code for our deployment. So managing Azure Verified Modules, delivering them to our customers, a wide range of use cases for that. So yeah, got a lot of experience in this space.
A bit about us and Servant. So we are an Azure focused partner. You may have come across us in the space. We've worked with customers of all shapes, sizes, verticals, enterprise scale, and of different Azure maturity and cloud maturity levels. In my experience, there's not a lot I haven't seen, and coming from a traditional infrastructure background, I can see the seismic shift in mentality around automation, infrastructure as code, and that's like the next seismic shift for your traditional infrastructure and networking and security engineer, which is my background. As I say, we're 100% focused, so there's not a lot we've not uncovered and don't know in this space. And we're always we pride ourselves on early adoption of these of new capabilities from Microsoft, so we can help shape our customer roadmaps in the same way. So the next slide, I'm going to talk about just why we champion AVMs or Azure Verified Modules at Servant. So I'm going to start from the right. So Microsoft supported and secure. So you're getting a Microsoft CAF and WAF, or well-architected framework aligned module that are built with those security best practices in mind. So if we think about having to host those yourselves, and maintaining that IP, you need a team internally to maintain those and ensure that you're building a confidence with your customer. So because Microsoft now support them and Jack's team are evangelizing in this space, it helps us massively as a partner to stay secure and supported for our customers. It provides us a simplified governance and compliance approach as well. So, historically, if we're building our own modules before AVM was a thing, before infrastructure as code become more mainstream, we'd have to build our own governance and testing frameworks around them as well. Again, you need heads to do that. You need governance of that. You need people focused on that. And again, it's something that we can take away and put that ownership on Microsoft, and we can consume those rather than write and build them. Customer flexibility and IP neutrality is critical for us as well. So over the years, having conversations with customers, we want to give them a sense of flexibility. We want to encourage open source capabilities. So we don't want to be tying customers into our own IP so they can, they have to operate the way Servant have said to operate, or we have to consume modules, and we've invested so much time and money into what Servant have delivered for us. We have no flex to move away from that, and that opens up much easier conversations around that now, because we can, as I say, consume those services, and in my opinion, the customer can take those services as far and as wide as they want to. The core offering from AVM should never change. How you call those and deploy those and approve those deployments, again, that can be entirely up to the customer, but the core technology at the back end should never need to change. As a leader in Servant now, and rising through the ranks, it makes the conversation around recruitment into Servant a bit easier as well, right? So we've not got to take new hires through onerous and lengthy onboarding practices and processes, because basically, if you know how an AVM is formed, how it's called, why it's there, it lowers the barrier for recruitment in our opinion. And the last bucket there before the last one is advanced partner evangelism, and what we pride ourselves on is providing a consistent foundation and approach to all customers. So if you're working with us at Servant, you might find that it started with let's say an Azure landing zone or an Azure foundation deployment that we call it. We will deploy that Azure landing zone in such a way that you can just extend that landing zone further, right? And the next project that you get, or the next requirement that you get to build an application landing zone on the side of a platform landing zone, for example, should be the same. And it doesn't matter who at Servant picks that up. The way they operate and deploy that next capability should always follow the same governance and build principles. And that's where AVM plays a massive part for us as well, because we can just update the versions and bring in new and great and latest technologies without fundamentally having to re-whiteboard it and understand how we're going to take an approach to a simple deployment in Azure. And lastly, to round this up, this is where I hand off to Aidan. It accelerates our delivery and gives us time savings, so our projects are more profitable for Servant, and the customer is getting more bang for buck. If something can take a couple of hours to deploy, let's take a couple of hours to deploy it, and not a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months. And this is where, because of the plug and play mentality of Azure Verified Modules, they're in public repositories, public registries. We've not got to stand up that infrastructure as a precursor before we can start deploying services into Azure, and that shrank our delivery times by up to 75% sometimes. And that's where I'm going to hand over to Aidan, and he'll give you a before and after view of the real world situation with our customers.
Cheers, Nathan. So before we adopted AVM, one of our offerings for AVD looked a bit like this. So we had really long ARM templates written in JSON. And the problem we had with this is whenever there was new feature updates or whenever we had to make changes, we were spending a lot of time having to come into here and make the necessary changes to each file. So moving to AVM for AVD, we've gone from a complex repo with a lot of ARM templates to now something that's a lot more simpler to manage. We've got less files, less lines of code. And as you can see, we're using AVM as much as we can for that delivery. And what's good about this is whenever there is a new feature update or whenever there is a change, all we're having to do now is come into here and update our modules to the latest version and potentially making a couple of changes. But the main foundations of our offering in the AVD space now, because it is built on AVM, we've kind of gave that responsibility to the product owners or the module owners. And again, that's a massive time saver for us. what else we kind of like as well, especially with AVD and all the virtual machine extensions. It's dead easy to just reference them now within a simple module block. We're not having to go away and write our own module for this, where there might be 4 or 5 other resources. So again, it's really simplified the approach, and that has allowed us to deploy AVD quicker and to more customers. So it's been really beneficial in that aspect. So how do we help our customers adopt AVM? Most of the customers we work with may not have a lot of experience with Terraform or infrastructure as code. They may be at the start of that journey, but they'll still want to adopt them best practices for deploying and managing their infrastructure. So they'll still be wanting to deploy it by infrastructure as code or by Azure Verified Modules. They just might not be in a position where they can. So one way we do this is with a deployment pipeline. So this is an example of deploying a pipeline to update your session host each month in AVD. What we're doing is giving the customer a product where they can just pass in a few parameters, hit run, and they can kick off that deployment of a session host. And what they can see in the background is they are deploying AVM modules without even having to touch them. So they get that sense of reassurance that they are following the best practices. We've given them a product that they can run with. If they needed to make changes to that, they don't rely on us. They could go away and find the modules and make them updates themselves. But it's just one way that we help our customers at the start of that journey. And as I said, AVM has massively simplified that approach for us. And yeah, that's just an example of having that deployed into a host pool. So
yes, it's an accelerator for us. We're aware of, with this in this example, AVD, we can apply it to everything, right? So we're aware, we're a Nerdio partner ourselves, right? But there's a journey a customer needs to go on before they decide that they're buying Nerdio to manage AVD environments, for example, right? So it depends on the scale and the size of the customer, right? But we can build a foundation around infrastructure and resource deployments time and time again. It doesn't matter what that is, and we can take the same approach to that. And we pride ourselves on that. And then the customer can scale and expand that as I say, as wide or as deep as they need to.
No, and thanks both for giving us your insights on how you're using AVM inside a Servant, and just a nice demo there. That's something that most partners or most people out there can probably relate to, that makes it easy for application teams to own that product, right, and deliver it, even if they don't know the underlying puzzle pieces and how to do that. So that's some real value there. I just got a couple of questions maybe to throw your way, and I'll direct them maybe one to each of you, as just conscious of time. But what's been your biggest challenge adopting AVM and using it so far? And maybe I'll come to you, Nathan, on that one.
Yeah, so obviously you don't have version 1.0.0 at the minute, so there's some resistance sometimes to adopting non V1 capabilities in a production type workload. But for me, the way I would answer that is there's a lot more benefits to AVM currently than there are drawbacks in non-version 1. And issues and bugs and things like that are usually, nowadays, they're resolved pretty quickly. And adopting a non-version 1 AVM module is a lot more efficient than trying to develop a module from the ground up on your own, having to test that, having to iterate that. So that, I would say, is the biggest challenge, but it's nothing we can't overcome with a bit of knowledge sharing and a bit of confidence from our side.
Absolutely, and more on that later as well. I'll cover some bits on that from our side. Maybe one for you then, Aidan. What would you say the biggest changes you've seen in AVM over the past year or so?
Yeah, so when, like Nathan was saying before, we pride ourselves as early adopters, and what we tend to find is we just, as soon as something's released, we have a go at it. And when we first started adopting AVM, there was obviously quite a few bugs, but maybe not everything had been tested. So we were raising quite a few issues and they were taking quite a while to be resolved. So we tended to fork the repositories locally until the next version came out of that module. But what we found over the year is that has shrunk massively. GitHub issues are being resolved a lot quicker and newer versions of the module, and there's just less bugs in general. So that's a massive positive. We're rarely ever having to clone them repos locally anymore to wait until a change has been implemented.
No, that's great. And like following on from that one, Aidan, like what would you want others to know who are about to adopt AVM, or maybe like on those early stages today? Like what would you want to push to them?
I would say kind of what Nathan said before, focus on what AVM can give you rather than what it can't. If it can do 95% of what you're after, that's better than, not doing it because of the 5% it doesn't. And if you have to tweak it, do it. But as I said, in just relating back to that AVD offering that we have now, the AVM has just simplified that massively. It's a lot less for us to manage. So yeah, I'd say focus on what it can do rather than what it can't do.
No, good advice. And final one for you, Nathan. I would say, what are your customers' reactions when you rock up with AVM versus your own IP?
It's like anything really with infrastructure as code. Unless you've got that foundational level of understanding around it, it can be really complex and overwhelming. But that's where we at Servant we pride ourselves on empowering fellow IT professionals, right? So we will give you the knowledge transfer. We're not in the game of here, we've built this, off you go, right? We pride ourselves on building that confidence up and fosters internal growth, because we want to see people not only embrace Azure, we also want to see them, take a sense of pride and enjoyment around what they are that they're deploying. And if you're like me and you come from that engineering background, right, and you've understood what an Azure resource is and why you're deploying it, the fun is then is understanding how you can deploy that at scale and then enhance those DevOps and peer approval processes more so than the resource you're deploying itself. So
great to hear. And I love that about what you're saying. Like you're not leaving customers with your own IP that they have to learn or get you back in. Like you're leaving them that flexibility to be able to go, hey, if you want to carry on with this, then you're completely free to, and you might not need us. And if you do, we're here, and off you go. And if you want to bring in somebody else, you absolutely can, right? It's an industry standard. So no, thank you both so much for your insights. Do go and check out Servant if you're looking to get more insights. I'm sure Aidan and Nathan wouldn't mind being pinged over LinkedIn or anything like that. So feel free to go and reach out. And yeah, thanks again for taking the time to come and share your journey with us.
Good job.
All right, with that, I think we are moving on to Matt.
Matt, yeah, feel free to take control, Matt.
Hello, everybody. I am going to speak to you about some of the AVM Terraform updates that we've got before. I think Jared is after me, but yeah. Let's have a look. So I've been spending a lot of time addressing some of the technical debt that we had and improving the module owner and contributor experience. We've had the testing framework in Azure Verified Modules for a little while now as a kind of evolution of something that we had before. And one of the problems that I certainly found with it was if you had an error with some of the testing, it's quite difficult to find out what had actually gone wrong and kind of addressed those issues. So the other problem we had was that we had about 4 or 5 repositories responsible for testing and governance, and so we wanted to consolidate that. So that work's been underway this month. We've consolidated it into a single repository called AVM Terraform Governance, and importantly we've unified the tooling that you used to run the tests locally and the checks locally and in GitHub Actions. So before we kind of had 2 different scripts, and it was a bit of a pain for us to maintain, to be honest, and you also got inconsistent results. And also news, today we have finally merged the tagging rules for Azure Verified Modules, because we had inconsistency around if you should have a V or not on your Git repo tags for the version. So some AVM modules you had to say the version was V, whatever, 0. whatever, and some you didn't. whereas we've addressed that now, and you have to have a V. So in future, everyone, you won't be allowed to create a release tag unless it's got a V in front of it. Again, just a little bit of quality of life, a little bit of consistency that we are building into it. But yeah, let's have a look at some of this new governance tooling. I want to switch to a repository, which I was working on earlier today. And this is it, it's the interfaces module. And for those who don't know, this is something that allows you as an AZ API module developer to easily consume the AVM standard interfaces, which are pretty much designed for Azure RM.
Hey, Matt, are you sharing your screen now?
Oh, no, I'm not.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah. Actually, can I do this? I can do that. That's what I want to do. Can I stop the PowerPoint for a minute?
Oh yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah, that's better. Okay, cool. Sorry, that's what I wanted to do. The reason I've done this is because I'm gonna have to switch to web browser in a minute, and then I didn't want to have to continuously share and not share. So yeah, this is the AVM interfaces module. We've got a new container image, which you can see at the top here, which has got the AVM tag on it. And the new testing tooling, you'll be familiar with the pre-commit, hopefully, which is what you do when you have made some changes to your module and you want to make sure the documentation is up to date. Before, it would just kind of spit out a load of stuff. Now, what you get is a little text user interface, and you can see kind of what it's doing. So it gets you real-time updates as to what's going on. It's all color-coded, so if something does go wrong, you can see exactly what it is. And ultimately, this tool is called Porch, stands for Portable Process Orchestrator, and it's the same tool that we run now in GitHub Actions as well as locally as well. So it's built into the container, and it's the same container we use. We run the same tool. The only difference is when you run it in GitHub Actions, you don't get this UI, you just get a log output. But yeah, so as this thing carries on, you can see that it's now generating some documentation, and it's running AVM fix now. And then after it's run that, it will generate some docs. Now, the nice thing is about this tool is that we can tell it to run stuff in parallel, we can tell it to run stuff in series, and it will collect all the results and then display them at the end. So as you can see, that's worked. You press Q to exit, and this is the kind of output that you'll get in GitHub Actions with some other log stuff. So it's quite cool. It looks quite nice. It's much more easier to understand. You can also go, you can run Terraform test as well. So if you run Terraform test, which actually generates some output, you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen that eventually you can see the status of your tasks as they run. So you can see like the last log output, like there, you can see what it's doing. So if you're doing something like testing examples and you've got a few of them running in parallel, you can kind of keep an eye on what's going on, and it gives you a lot more feedback as to the status of the testing. So what I wanted to do now is jump over to the repository. So this is the new repository governance, the Terraform repository that we use for governance. You can see it's got everything else, everything we need in it. And this, we've made a lot of investments in the testing that we do of this. So whenever we make changes to any of these files that we use to govern your repos, we actually build the container locally, and then we run a complete test on some modules of the configurations before we end up rolling that out. So we've got a lot more assurance that we're not going to break anything, essentially, because we're now managing like 200 modules. So the chances of us, if we break something, it's pretty serious. Just flicking over quickly to one of the runs. So this is running a PR check, again, using that same tool that I showed you earlier. And I thought I'd show you a failure because it's all very nice seeing green lights and stuff. But before, when you had an issue with one of these pipelines, it was really, really hard to find out what was going wrong, right? So now you get a familiar green output, and you can see, okay, some stuff worked, but then it's really easy to see what failed. You can see that it's running tflint, it's running the create key example, and it's got a error here, say that we've got to provide a constraint issue going on, and that's the reason why it's not worked. So now you can go into that example, you can find out what's wrong, you can debug the errors. Okay, so hopefully that's a lot easier to manage for you all. So yeah, I'm conscious of time, but that is my updates. I'm handing it back.
Thanks a lot, Jack. Jared, you're up next. You want me to share back the PowerPoint, probably?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Yep, it's coming up.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'll just skip. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, so just wanted to share a little bit about a tool that we've been working on. That work? Can you see the slide that says Terraform state import? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I've lost my navigation for some reason. Okay, so we've written this tool. We wrote it basically because we needed to have a migration path from the CAF Enterprise Scale module, which is part of the Azure Landing Zones, to the Azure Verified Modules for Platform Landing Zone, which is the AVM version of the Platform Landing Zone modules. And we needed a way to help customers with that migration process. So we ended up writing this tool, but when we were writing this tool, it was easier to write the tool in a generic way that was configurable rather than write something that was very specific to that module. So we want to share this tool with you because it is generic and it could be used for other workloads migrating into AVM or between any Terraform module, basically. Fundamentally, it'll only work with Azure. It won't work with AWS or anything like that at this time, and it'll basically work with anything that sits under Azure Resource Manager. So anything that's built on the Azure RM or AZ API providers, it'll work with those. And basically, it will guide you through a process of mapping resources and attributes, and at the end of it, it'll spit out a bunch of import blocks for you, so you don't have to manually go through and create many hundreds, in some cases, of import blocks to import state into an AVM module. You can use this tool to help you generate those import blocks for you. We've published some guidance that's quite specific to CAF Enterprise Scale to AVM. That's available on the first link there. And we provide example configuration files and things like that. And the tool itself, you can find it at the second link there. So how it works, basically, there's 3 stages to it. So there's a setup stage. You need to provide some config to the tool. You need to tell it either which subscriptions you want to target or which management groups, or you can have a combination of both if you want. You need to tell it what things you want to query. We provide some examples ready to go for this, but basically it uses KQL, custom query language queries, to query Azure resources and get that information back. So it doesn't actually look at, in the case of the CAF Enterprise Scale module, for example, it's not looking at your existing state file. It's not looking at the module code. It's just looking at Azure to get the information it needs. So it doesn't need to look at the pre-existing module at all. We provide some exclusions just to reduce noise as well. So there might be certain resource types that you don't want to see in the output. Again, we've got examples of that as well. And in some cases, the tool tries to map resources based on their name. In some cases, that's not possible. So we provide a mechanism to provide some custom mappings as well, so you can map on other attributes of an object. And then the most important thing is you need to tell it what your target module is. So you'll have on your local file system, you'll have your module that you're targeting, which is hopefully an AVM module. And you tell it that as well. And based off that information, it can then start the next 2 stages. So the second stage is resource mapping. So we're mapping one resource from Azure to your module. So like a storage account or a virtual network or a subnet, whatever it might be, that's basically got an ID in Azure. You're mapping that to what's in your new Terraform module. You run the tool to do that, and it'll spit out a file, a CSV file, with everything that it can't match on. And then basically you can go back to your Terraform module, update the names of the resources so that they match what you're expecting them to be from Azure, and repeat that on a cycle. You can do that as many times as you want, iterate on it until everything's matching that can possibly be matching. For anything that isn't matching after that, there's a mechanism to update the issues file, tell it what you want to do with that thing. So you can either ignore it, you can tell it to delete it if you want to, or you can tell it to delete it and recreate it. And that's like a scenario where you just can't map on it, but it's something that's safe to delete and recreate. You then save those decisions that you've made back into the CSV file. And then we go through to the third stage, which is the attribute mapping. So this is the individual attributes of a resource. So like the SKU of a storage account or the IP prefix of a subnet, those kind of attributes of a resource as opposed to the resource itself. So you feed in that issues CSV, it then generates a bunch of moved and delete blocks. A delete block is not a Terraform thing, but we have a mechanism for creating a way of deleting a resource, basically. But it should say import block there as well. I've just done a typo there. That should say it generates import blocks, not move blocks, sorry. And then it's going to spit out a plan. With the plan, it filters out all the things that are maybe not of interest. So things that it's creating new or things that don't have any changes, it's going to exclude all those from that plan file. So it just gives you things that you should be interested in looking at. So things that it's going to either change or things that it's going to delete and recreate. And it's going to show you those things. And then you can go through and map your attributes, update your attributes in your target module, your new module, and you can repeat that on an iteration as well. So you can see if there's anything else outstanding in that plan file. Once you've covered everything off, you can then just run a Terraform apply against your module, and it'll import the state and make any new, if there's anything new in your module, it'll deploy those things, obviously, and that kind of stuff. But basically, that's in summary, that's how the tool works. So there's tools in preview, and the guidance for CAF to AVM migration is also in preview. We're hoping to get it out of preview soon with the help of Aidan, who's just been talking on this call. That is one of the people that's helping us with that, doing the testing on it. And then, yeah, but this, like I said, this tool is generic. So if you wanted to take a look at it and see if it could suit some of your other use cases, we'd be very happy for you to do that. That was everything I wanted to cover. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Yeah.
Taking control, and I think René, you're next.
And now it's working. So yeah, thank you for the feedback. You can just click on the next slide, please. So I have a couple of features that have been released on the Bicep side since the last community call. And the changelogs feature got a separate slide because we think this is a very important and very good one. So it offers transparency by really seeing what has changed in the last version. So whenever versions are published or updates are there, yeah, you can now see in the changelog what has really changed. If there are breaking changes, yeah, and we have captured the requirements and how to what to write in the changelogs and how to build it in the linked specification. So, for example, that only module updates are really relevant for showing up here in the changes list. So if the module contributors or owners change something in the tests, that will most likely not show up in the changelogs because it's not really relevant for the usage. The spec is out for a couple of months already, but we have just last week enabled or enforced the continuous integration pipeline by checking the existence of changelogs and for valid content. So that, yeah, meaningful content is in there, that the versions are correct, yeah, and basically doing, yeah, the usual CI validation stuff. Initial changelogs for all existing modules have been added. That's only a comment like initial release, so it's not really helpful, but we needed a starting point. So yeah, further pipelines will be green. That's why we added the initial versions. Yeah, more updates. So another one is that as a module owner, you are now enabled to, you can skip CI tests, which is not advised, but sometimes it is necessary. So for example, if you can only deploy a certain service in a subscription one time, or a subscription needs to be whitelisted for a certain service, then it is possible to exclude the deployment of test cases in the testing environment. Still, the tests appear in the changelogs. Still, the tests appear in GitHub, so you can use them as reference for documentation. Another update is that we have added deprecation of modules to the module lifecycle. I think Terraform already had that, but from the Bicep side, we added this as well. So if you go to the website, you can also click on the individual boxes here to get more information when deprecation is needed or what are requirements for that. Yeah, it was a necessary step because sometimes modules get not only often, but really deprecated because there is a successor module which does the same things and is maintained. That might make it necessary to deprecate certain modules. Another update is regarding tooling. So when you're working with VS Code, you can configure the bicep behavior in the bicep config file. And we have added one to the root directory of the bicep registry modules repository. So whenever you clone it, fork it, do whatever with it, you will have then, here you see that the version of the storage account is outdated, or there is a recent version, a more recent version available. And you can now just see it, click on it, or use shortcuts to update the version to a newer version, which makes it feasible. You can see when you are referencing older versions, and this applies to resource modules, also ARM resource provider modules, also to AVM modules. And that's it from the bicep update side.
Thank you, Renee. Thanks a lot. Moving on to the next topic. John, you're up, and I'm just putting your slide, and I think you want to share your screen.
Yes, thanks, Charlie. I'm going to share just real quick. So as part of the ongoing improvement to instructions about how to use AVM, we received feedback that more detailed examples and some overall guidance, especially for new customers exploring IAC, would be useful. And so what we did over the past couple of months, we created some additional context and content for how to use AVM modules. And so just real quick highlights here. There's 3 new pages underneath the usage guide section of the website. Listed as solution development. They walk through this top page is generic to both Bicep and Terraform AVM offerings. And they just walk through reasons you might choose either solution, talk through how you might build your architecture and the value of starting with an architecture before starting coding, and then just where you may want to go in the either AVM repo or the Terraform website to find modules that will fit your need. From there, we dedicated pages for both Bicep and Terraform. For the Bicep page, we kept a common framework here. So we talked through the solution architecture, then walked through specific deployment steps. And the goal was to have a guide that could be followed and have a working and functional example as part, not only learning, but also just so that you could see how a real world situation might appear. Finally, we did the same thing for Terraform. So we provide a set of prereqs, an architecture. Now the architecture doesn't match. I actually have an action where I'm working to build parity so you can do a true comparison between Bicep and Terraform guides here. And so that'll be in the next month or so. I should have that out. And then we just walk you through deploying that actual architecture. So feel free to take a look at these. Hope you find benefit. If you discover content additions you'd like to add or issues that you have concerns about, please post issues, as well as if there's additional website content you'd like to see. As an example, I believe Renee is working on some functionality to allow for abbreviation enumeration with a hover capability. So there's some things that we've gotten feedback on to make the website more functional. Happy to support that. Just feel free to drop us some issues. Back to you, Charlie.
Thanks a lot, John. Super useful guidance indeed. Jack, you're next.
I am indeed. Perfect. I can take control once it comes through.
Yep.
So yeah, thanks everybody for sticking with us. We are looking like we might overrun. Please stick around. Lots of great stuff to go. It's fairly standard on these calls. An hour is never enough. But it'll also be on YouTube, so you can catch up as always. So with that, let's get going. So topic that we heard Servant talk about, and a lot of people always raise, is like, when are you going V1? What's the deal here? Now, before I share some exciting news, I just want to like bring us all back to an important reminder, right? So like AVM modules today, you can absolutely go and use in production. And they are being used in production by many organizations of different shapes, sizes, industries today, right? Like there's lots of great examples of people using it. You saw Servant using it with their customers, right? You can go and use it. There's nothing stopping you or preventing you from doing it. But we completely understand that some people, might want to wait until V1. I just want to make sure that people remember that V1, as it says at the bottom, doesn't equals ready for production. V1 equals stability and no planned breaking changes, right? So how we operate and maintain and do those modules today isn't really going to change as we go V1. All that we're going to say is that we're comfortable that we're not really going to make any large breaking changes to the modules or the framework or the tests and stuff like that. So you've seen lots of stuff for us going on in testing frameworks that Matt shared, and the great tooling that he's built there with Porch, and how we're transforming the Terraform world. And obviously you've seen more things that Rene has been up to with the Bicep team in terms of the Bicep modules. And like, it's important to remember, like, even today, right, Bicep itself is still not version 1, right? So we depend on Bicep, and that's not version 1, but it's been supported since 0.3 in production by the product group. So that's a pre V1, and people are using that today. And Terraform, right, we were up to 0.15, and it was like maybe 5-6 years before it went V1, and people again were using it in production, and people probably are still out there using a 0. Release of Terraform in the wild in their environments because they haven't upgraded to V1 yet. I highly recommend they do and get on with it. But V1 doesn't mean it's ready for production. You can actually use those today. However, we do understand that some customers might have strict rules and internal governance processes that mean V1 is just a semantic and it has to be a thing, and that's what you're waiting for before you can adopt it. But I just want to put that out there now today, like they are ready for you to use, and please do go use them. But the moment we have all been waiting for, AVM is now about 2 years old, and we've seen about 14 million module deployments since we started. So we're feeling confident now that the AVM framework, and by that I mean the specs and the processes and the testing that we have, unlikely to really go through any large breaking changes now. We're doing the final bits as we speak, and we'll talk about how we get there. But that now enables us to start thinking about, right, we're probably ready to make that notional V1 move, because we don't think we're going to make any breaking changes, and therefore we're going to have a bit of stability. But to caveat that, it's not going to be a thing that happens overnight, right? We're suddenly not going to wake up tomorrow and everything's going to be V1. We've still got quite a bit of work to do. You've seen that Matt's been busy and the team have been busy building tooling and refining stuff to make sure that we're absolutely rock solid, ready to go. And also module owners have got some stuff to do as well, right? They've got to make sure that they're being compliant with some of the rules that we're going to set for what going to V1 means. And to give you a bit more insight into those, I want to share like how we're going to get there, right? So what are we going to do to get to V1 and make modules V1? So the first thing that I want to share is that we will make the AVM framework itself, so the website, the specifications, the rules, the CI tooling, the testing, all of that V1 when we're ready as the core team. We will then allow modules to opt in to go version 1 on a per module basis, right? And it will be the owner's responsibility because they are responsible for their module today, not the core team. And that is so that they're in control and they're happy that they haven't got to do any major refactoring work. They're on top of their issues. It's stable. They might have created a module for a preview service, and they're not sure if the service itself is going to make a big change under the hood that might cause them to do a refactor. So they might want to stay in a 0. Release for a little while. So we want to give module owners the flexibility to choose when they want to go V1. But when they do go V1, it's their choice, and they can opt in to go and enable that. When are we going to do this? Well, we're thinking about doing this in half 2, which is technically from now into towards the end of the calendar year. We hope to obviously bring that as soon as possible. But right now, we're just entering a new financial year here at Microsoft. Literally today, we're all busy catching up on what that means. And also we've got a lot of things to finish off getting completed, like getting tests written. It should say CY25, very good spot. It's because we put FY originally and then we changed it, so apologies. That should say customer year 25, which is from now until the end of this calendar year, not next year. Don't worry, people. But
or calendar year, not customer year. But yes.
Or calendar year, customer year, whatever. Yeah, there's many inclinations of the same phrasing. But yeah, absolutely. That is from now until the end of this calendar year, 2025. We are just finishing WAF testing, spec adjustments. We're making sure that anything in the specs that says it's a must is tested and automated. And if it can't be tested, we're looking at then maybe downgrading that to a should and some of those things, because we want to make sure that our specs are automated as much as possible. Also, we've got some external dependencies, right? I mentioned Bicep itself isn't V1. We know that that's on its way, as they've shared in previous community calls. So we're working with that team as well to make sure that we're all joined up at the hip, and there's going to be no changes that we're going to need to adopt and put across all of our changes. So I see Emily's put her hand up, and Emily's the person owning that as far as I understand. So Emily, go on.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Jack. I just wanted to call out that we now have a Bicep V1 milestone in our GitHub repo that everyone is able to track and see what we plan to commit to get to the point where we're able to release V1. Can't speak to the official release date, but you can follow along there. And we also plan to roll it out very soon. So we appreciate the encouragement and support on the AVM side here.
Awesome. No, thanks, Emily, and thanks for sharing the milestone. So as you can see, like we're working closely. We want to make sure that we ingest all those changes so that we don't go V1 and then Bicep goes V1 and we have to then go V2 because there's loads of breaking changes. So we're making sure that everything's lined up nicely. And in terms of some of the rules for going for V1 for these module owners, right? Initially, it's going to focus on resource modules. We will allow pattern modules to go V1 themselves, as long as all of the dependent resource modules that they're using are V1 themselves and they're using those in the pattern module. Utility modules, we're not going to allow to go V1 just yet because they're still fairly new to AVM, sort of less than a year old. So we're still refining those and making sure that we've understood and the use case and scenarios where we use them and we haven't got any issues there. So that's fine. We're not going to allow that just yet. We're going to say that all issues and PRs should ideally be closed for the module prior to V1, or at least sufficiently responded to, right? There may be some that are going to be forever long running and need more feedback, but we're going to say that as a statement. And we also want to say that they're in compliance with the new support statement, which I'll cover in a second. We also need to see from ourselves some active deployment telemetry of the module outside of Microsoft. So we're very conscious that inside of Microsoft, there's lots of people using these, but we want to see some external customer deployments of this via our telemetry. And we're roughly saying, like, if we see more than 20 unique deployments in different customers, then we're probably in a good place to say it's good to go because there's been no issues raised, etc., etc. So that's some really high level statements that we're saying about going V1. So just to recap, it's coming. It's on its way, hopefully as soon as possible between now and December. Or the end of December. Stay tuned. We'll keep giving updates. We'll keep letting you know what's going on. But as you can see, the team are working really hard on making sure that everything's polished and the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed to make sure that we can deliver that quality that you all expect from us, and rightly so. I will check out the chat in a second. But if you've got any questions, feel free to stick them in there and I'll answer them when I've finished. On from that, we mentioned the support statement, right? And this is a big one for us. So you may have seen the blog post that we put out a couple of weeks ago, but we're changing the support statement that we put out. So we're going to be honest, right? We know we haven't been meeting the current SLA/target that we defined for issues and PRs, right? And that does upset us, a lot of us, right? It's a big gripe that all of us have. We share your pain. And it's also causing pain and frustration for some of you consuming it as well. So previously we stated this, right? It was 3 business days, and then if nobody responded for a further 24 hours, the AVM team had another 2 days to get involved. So it was like 5 days. But there was no real filtering here between feature requests and issues and bugs and like all of that stuff. And it was a little bit hard for us to maintain. And what we heard was that it was actually hard for our module owners to keep up with this because there was not really much of that delineation between issue types. And also, it was hard for them to see across multiple repositories or multiple modules that they're owning. So what we've done is we've changed our support statement to become this. So our new support statement is separating out issues and bugs from feature requests. And we've upped the times on the response times for these both as well. So we're saying for bugs and security issues, it's now 5 business days for a meaningful response and an ETA to be provided for a fix. That fix could be past the 5 days, but we're saying that we'll acknowledge it, we'll triage it, and we'll get that initial triage process done within the 5 business days. For issues that do reach that 5 business days, the AVM core team will get notified. So that's the people you see on this call. And we can then step in and help triage that within an additional 5 days. And then for security issues and stuff like that, as always, the product group, if they really want to, they can also step in and help out as well if we need them. But we've never had to really enact that one, thankfully. And then for feature requests, we're saying it's 15 business days for a meaningful response and initial triage for the feature request. So we may provide an ETA when we get around to it, but we may not, right? And I think it's also important to understand that module owners are real people. They have day jobs. They're doing their thing. They're contributing to their modules. They may have multiple modules. They also go on holiday and have periods of leave. So we need to accommodate for that. So we've made it a little bit more flexible. And that's sort of more based on the data that we've actually been seeing of what people have been able to achieve. So we're confident that that is more realistic of what we're able to offer. The most important statement is the bottom here, right? AVM is open source. Aidan mentioned this right at the beginning. Contributions are more than welcome. We will never turn down a contribution. We'll actually probably go out of our way to make sure that your contribution is successful so that we can get you doing the work for us and we can help you out getting your contribution into the module and released for everybody else to benefit from. So if you're out there and you've raised an issue and you've got the skills, because most of you are very talented people, and you've raised an issue, think about going to that next step. Think about taking the action and going, actually, I'll raise the issue so that they're aware, but I'll also say, yeah, actually, I'll pick this up and have a go at it myself, and put that pull request in, right? And if at any point you're seeing that that's not being upheld and you're having a bad contribution experience, please feel free to reach out to me directly, Charlie directly, any of us on the AVM core team directly. We want to make that different and we want to change that. But we would really love to see more contributions from the community as well, because that will really help us obtain and keep the quality of these modules and the features that you will want getting there as fast as possible. We've shared this all in a blog, so you can go and read this, digest it in a little bit more detail in the very candid manner that I deliver it. So you can go and see that there. But do go and check that out, and I will now head to the chat and start answering questions whilst we hand over to Emily to share a really exciting topic that we're all interested in.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Jack and Emily. Our apologies because you have a hard stop in 5 minutes. So please go ahead.
No worries. We'll be able to get through it. Am I controlling? Maybe I'll take control of the screen.
Yes, please
here.
take control. Yep.
Okay. Are we seeing the support statement now?
Yep.
Okay, Copilot. There we go. Great. So I wanted to share an update with this community. Thank you to the AVM team for inviting me here for an opportunity to share an update on our Bicep Copilot support as it pertains to the AVM integrated support, and also as an opportunity to gain feedback from the group here today. So I wanted to begin. I know folks are eager to hear an update on our progress. So I wanted to kick off with an update of what we have out today and what we continue to plan work on. And so today we have 2 main Copilot or AI support available for Bicep. Both of these have been contributed to either by our Bicep team directly or a partner team at Microsoft. There may be other repos out there, other tools that are helpful for Bicep or AVM development, but these are the only 2 that our Bicep team has collaborated directly on. If you are using other tools, repos, etc., would love if you could drop them in the chat. I'm always curious to see community contributions and see what folks are finding useful, and potentially reach out to those folks or learn from them. So please add those into the chat. But in terms of the Microsoft official support, we have Bicep Copilot support in the Azure portal today. And then we also have Bicep support in the VS Code extension named GitHub Copilot for Azure. And the links to both of those are on the screen there. I had originally planned to show a brief demo on the GitHub Copilot for Azure. We won't have time to do a live demo today, but I will show the results from my demo on the screen at the end if there's time. If not, I provided the 2 prompts that I used for my demo, and encourage you to download the GitHub Copilot for Azure extension and try out those prompts. Now, where are we going in the future with Bicep AI support. Our team's plan as of now is to focus on agent support for Bicep. And we will likely do this through the MCP protocol. What is still in the works is where we will serve or host this and how you can access it. So I don't have a link or an update for you on that, but I do want to communicate that we're working to define the tools that would provide this agent support. And we're working with the AVM team to do so, to make sure that AVM support is part of that. So as I said, I don't have an official tool list or an official link for where you can access this today, but that is one of my main responsibilities in my role on the team, and I'm really excited to drive it forward. So although we don't have specific tools that I can point you to, we have been brainstorming a few specific AVM scenarios. We've, of course, been brainstorming other Bicep scenarios, but for the sake of this audience, I wanted to focus on the AVM scenarios. And so I would love to hear feedback in the chat for folks that are still here as to whether we are missing any major scenarios that you're looking for on this list, or if you have any amendments or edits, comments on the scenarios we've already brainstormed. So just to speak to them briefly, these are 3 options that we're considering. They're not mutually exclusive, but we won't necessarily be able to do all of them at once. And so one possibility of a user scenario would be to generate infrastructure as code for Azure, given a defined list of resources, and default to AVM modules for resources wherever possible. And now this isn't something that every Bicep user would want to elect into, but we're considering what this might look like or how we might be able to build this out for folks that would like to default to AVM. And this is a question we have for this group in particular, is that a kind of default scenario that you would want to be able to set yourself? Or do you resonate more closely with the second scenario, which is to use AVM modules for either specific resources or specific scenarios when requested by the user? So if you can give your thoughts between scenario 1 and scenario 2 in the chat, that would really inform how we're thinking about the tools. And then a third scenario that we've been pondering is using chat mode or ask mode to find and explain potentially relevant AVM modules. So maybe neither of the first 2 scenarios resonate with you, and you don't want it to automatically put in or even put in AVM modules at request, but you're looking to use these tools rather than to generate the code, to actually just find and explain which modules might be helpful in the context of your code base. So please, as I said, thank you, John, for adding. I see you have 2 and 3 in your opinion in the chat and a few thumbs up on there. Another participant is into option 1, all out. So the more context we can get on those, the more helpful for our team to make a decision. Call for feedback. So please continue to share your demos and feedback. I've linked, one of our community members has posted a fantastic blog about how they're using the GitHub Copilot for Azure extension. Being able to see how our users are using it in practice and getting their feedback in written form is extremely helpful. So whether you're the kind of person who likes to post that online through a blog, or you would like to provide direct feedback, in which case you can reach me at my email there on the screen, emilyredmond@Microsoft. Would appreciate either forum, and always feel free to ping me and point me towards articles, blogs, or other experiences. Extremely helpful. In terms of resources, I have a feedback form, which I've also added above in the chat. If you could provide written feedback, it's really the best way for us to share it with our stakeholders and partner teams. And it's the best way to influence our thinking and our planning. So please share written feedback if you're so inclined. Not every question is required. Fill in as much as you can. But please make sure to specify the model and the endpoint that you're using, so we know how you're accessing our tools, because as I mentioned, each tool has slightly different support. And then finally, if you're just looking for an overview of Bicep AI support, I've created this GitHub issue that shows an overview and links to the different tools and support that we have today, where you can also add feedback in the form of comments on the GitHub issue. So sorry we didn't get a chance to show the full demo. I'll flash up very quickly. I won't show much, but just to show a little bit about how you can use the GitHub Copilot for Azure extension, which was our initial test at Bicep support. you can make sure you have it downloaded in your extensions here, GitHub Copilot for Azure. And then you can use Ask or Agent mode in the Copilot chat. And then you can ask it questions like define a storage account in Bicep using Azure Verified Modules. You can see what's available out of the box today, and then you can provide feedback on how you would like us to improve this process for you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. I know you have to run. You're already invited for the next community call, and that time you'll go first. I promise.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And together with the slides and so on, we'll repost on our community page the two surveys that you shared. So we're getting towards the end of this session. A lot of Q&As have been answered directly on the chat. We had so by the way, feel free for the next community calls, feel free to post your questions ahead of time on the GitHub issue. So we had one on ALZ Bicep. But I think you already answered that one on the chat, Jack.
I have indeed, and just maybe for the recording, if you're looking for an update on the latest on ALZ Bicep moving to AVM, myself, Zach, and the rest of the team are very busy working on this. We will hopefully get this out in the next few months is the current intent. There's a blog post that you can find in the chat. But if you go on the Tech Community Azure Tools blog, you'll find it on there. This is an update on Bicep ALZ. We're working on it busy now, but if you want to get going right now, the migration journey from the old version, let's call that ALZ Bicep, to Bicep AVM for ALZ won't be as complicated as the Terraform approach because we don't have state to worry about, right? So we won't need a tool like Jared's spent a little time writing for Terraform. That's amazing. We can do a bit more quickly because we can just go over the top and run our deployments and check what's different because we haven't got to migrate any state. So you could deploy the one today, and we will provide guidance on how you can get from the one that exists today, being ALZ Bicep, into AVM Bicep ALZ. So yes, it's on its way. We'll give you the migration tool in, but you can go straight now. Or if you really want to, go and build it with AVM modules that already exist, right? Most of them are out there today. You could go and build it yourself using what is already out there today because there's nothing stopping you. And I know some of you on the call have definitely done that. So yeah, you could go and hand crank it yourself based on AVM modules natively today. But if you want to wait for the pre-packaged offering, it will come out within the next few months. I'm also seeing some mentions in the chat about finding out about the call. So yeah, we'll take that back. I think we did. This one was very last minute because we realised we hadn't done one in a while, and we wanted to get one done before the summer break in Europe, before a lot of us disappear away. So generally, the best place to stay up to date is aka.ms/avm/community. And you'll find the recordings of all the previous ones and the ones going forward. We always put the registration links on there. So that's the best way to stay tuned. We will try and do better. We will generally put a banner on the top of that AVM site as well to try and make it as easy as possible to find on the homepage. They're probably the best places to stay tuned to. But we'll do better at getting more messaging out in more advanced notice next time. But yeah, this one was a bit last minute, so apologies for that if some of you only found out about it late.
Yeah, and emailing is a little bit more tricky for us for privacy reason, handling emails and so on. So that's why we don't do that. But yeah, we'll try to make it better.
Awesome.
We might have missed some questions.
I was going to say, is it worth talking about the Terraform providers thing? That seems to be a recurring theme from earlier on, just quickly.
Yeah, definitely a recurring theme.
Sure, I'll try and do it as briefly as I can. Azure RM v4 came out a little while ago, as you know, when we've been updating. All of the core modules are kind of there now. We've got a few remaining that aren't. Unfortunately, Azure RM v5 is on the horizon now, and we are rapidly considering what to do because essentially it's too much churn for us. So what we want to do is move towards all of the kind of core modules and resource modules being AZ API, and we won't have as much an issue because fundamentally the API, the thing that you send to the API doesn't really change that much. So that's in short going to be the answer to that question. It's going to take us a little while to get there, as you'd expect. There's been some great updates with AZ API 2.5 in terms of ability to migrate from Azure RM to AZ API. So yeah, watch this space.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, so the question on statistics, we'll see if we can share some more telemetry, but typically we cannot really share more granular telemetry, but we'll try.
Maybe some high level numbers and stats that are not specific. We could probably share like we've shared today, just put it as a slide.
Remember, the Terraform registry has got a public API. You can query, just get a download count for any module you like, either in JSON format or using the normal web browser. But yeah.
So yeah, we'll take that on, and we'll maybe give you a quick slide next time. But yeah, with that, I'm conscious we're over.
Yes.
Thanks everybody for sticking with us.
Thank you so
and
much.
as always, keep raising issues. Keep reaching out and keep letting us know, and we will speak to you. Yeah, the next one will be in the next quarter, so probably September, October time,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, October timeframe probably. Thank you so much, everyone.
Fizzle.